Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. I was lying on the operating table when I heard the news. Lynn, Ethan's childhood sweetheart, was dying. Ethan, who had been preparing for my surgery, suddenly dropped his scalpel. Turning to his colleague, he spoke in a steady yet hurried tone. "I'll leave my wife's surgery to you." Without waiting for a reply, he walked out. Watching his retreating back, tears welled up in my eyes. The next moment, a cold scalpel touched my skin, and a calm voice pierced through my despair. "Why are you crying? I'm here. You won't die." It was Dr. Nathan, Ethan's colleague, a renowned surgeon. His demeanor exuded the same calm professionalism Ethan once had. As the surgery began, Nathan's words echoed in my mind. It had been 20 minutes since the news about Lynn broke. For the first time, my composed husband had faltered. He had abruptly halted my surgery, excusing himself with a veneer of calm, but his trembling hands betrayed him. Lynn's accident had shaken him to the core. I could see it. He was so desperate to be by her side that it consumed him. A nurse hesitated before whispering, "Dr. Ethan, your wife's heart rate is spiking. Are you sure you want to leave now?" My heart ached, but I forced a steady tone. "It's fine. Any surgeon will do." The pitying looks in the operating room stung, but I managed to smile. That smile masked a realization I had known all along. Ever since Lynn re-entered Ethan's life, my marriage to Ethan was over. When Ethan reappeared in my life alongside Lynn, I knew he could never let her go. For him, leaving a dying Lynn to perform surgery on me was unimaginable, and for me, trusting my life to a man like that was equally impossible. The operating room doors opened and Nathan entered silently, his sharp features hidden by a surgical mask. His cool, distant voice broke the tension as he and Ethan crossed paths. "Ethan, I'll take over the surgery. Go. You'll regret it forever if you don't." Ethan glanced at me briefly before vanishing. His departure left a deafening silence in its wake. Tears streamed down my face as the scalpel hovered near my skin once again. Amia, the name he used to call me with affection, had been left behind. Nathan's voice broke through the fog of my thoughts. "Why are you crying? I told you you won't die." The surgery lasted 2 hours. By the time I was wheeled out, the rain outside had turned into a torrential downpour. Nathan stayed with me until my condition stabilized, then quietly left. I had barely begun to recover when Ethan's call came through. The anesthesia had worn off, leaving me drenched in cold sweat. I hesitated before answering. On the other end, a cheerful, youthful voice greeted me. "Hi, Mia. I didn't mean to cause trouble. I don't know what my brother told him, but I only have a minor scratch." Yet Ethan rushed over like the world was ending. I already scolded him. In the background, her teasing voice echoed again. "Seriously, Ethan, you're not with me anymore. Stop being so dramatic." There was a scuffle and Ethan's deep, stern voice replaced hers. "Didn't I tell you to stay put? You don't want that wound infected." Her soft laughter lingered in the background, but all I felt was a crushing weight in my chest. The pain in my abdomen throbbed, and the thought of asking Ethan for help vanished. I hung up without a word. Moments later, a nurse entered and handed me medication. "Dr. Nathan prescribed these for you. Rest well." I was discharged 3 days later. Ethan's car was parked outside. As I stepped out of the hospital, instinctively, I opened the passenger door. A startled gasp made me freeze. Lynn, leaning from the driver's seat, quickly pulled back as though trying to disappear. Her disheveled collar and mischievous gaze sent a chill through me. "Mia, I didn't mean for you to see this," she stammered, her voice laced with panic. Ethan casually removed a strand of her hair from his watch. His tone was indifferent yet firm. "Don't say nonsense. Don't give me the wrong idea." Then turning to me, he explained calmly, "Her hair got tangled in my watch when I was picking something up." I believed him. Ethan had always been upright and honest. Before our marriage, he had said, "I've been in a relationship before, but after we marry, I'll be loyal to you." Yet sometimes his boundaries blurred, giving rise to ambiguous moments like this one. Suppressing the bitterness in my chest, I spoke softly. "Ethan, we need to talk alone." Perhaps sensing my unease, Lynn bit her lip. "Ethan, maybe you should take a cab home. Mia seems upset." Ethan responded calmly, Your legs still work. Go home yourself. Hurt flickered across Lynn's face, but she eventually left. As I took her seat, the car filled with an unbearable silence. Finally, Ethan spoke in a low voice. There's no need to take your frustration out on her. The call was an emergency consult. I would have left no matter who it was. I had no energy to decipher his thoughts. I was simply tired. Ethan, I said, let's get a divorce. The car jerked to a halt as he slammed on the brakes. His composed expression cracked as he turned to me. Mia, why is this about Lynn? I nodded, enduring the sharp pain from my wound. Yes, it's because of Lynn. Ethan's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. Outside, the sharp blare of a car horn cut through the silence. We both turned to see Lynn sprawled on the street corner, surrounded by a concerned crowd. From this angle, the scene was painfully clear. I let out a bitter laugh, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Your precious Lynn has fallen. Aren't you going to check on her? Ethan's expression turned cold, his voice flat as he restarted the car. You're already divorcing me. Why would I care about someone irrelevant? The tension inside the car was suffocating. Neither of us spoke during the drive home. When we finally arrived, our cat Tansy came bounding toward us, meowing and brushing affectionately against our legs. Tansy had been Ethan's wedding gift to me, a symbol of the bond we promised to build together. Over the years, she'd made it her habit to sleep between us, an unspoken bridge between the growing distance in our marriage. Ethan crouched to scoop her up, his voice unusually gentle. Tansy, tell Mama not to be mad at Papa anymore. Help me out, okay? Tansy responded with a playful meow, looking up at me with wide, curious eyes. This had always been his tactic when we argued, using Tansy to soften my heart. He knew I couldn't resist the little cat's charm, but this time I remained silent. Breaking the heavy atmosphere, Ethan changed the subject. Did you take the painkillers Dr. Sue prescribed on time? I raised an eyebrow, catching the underlying meaning in his words. You mean the painkillers you asked him to prescribe? A faint smirk flickered across his lips, but it didn't reach his eyes. Of course. Did you think I'd abandon you? Without waiting for a response, he leaned in, his cool fingertips brushing against my cheek as he cued my face. Mia, he murmured, his voice low and pleading. I'm not foolish enough to destroy our marriage. Let's not get a divorce, okay? I shook my head, the proximity suffocating me. No, not this time. If Lynn had returned 3 years ago, I might not have cared. Back then, my relationship with Ethan was more of a transaction than a romance. We had met through a matchmaking service. His prestigious medical career aligned well with my stable position as a university professor. Our marriage was built on convenience, not passion. In the first year, our schedules rarely aligned, and our dates were few and far between. Somewhere along the way, I had fallen for him. Maybe it was the slow accumulation of shared moments, or perhaps it was that rainy night after I got into a car accident. The memory was seared into my mind, the other driver shouting at me as I stood in the downpour, drenched and helpless. And then Ethan appeared, his umbrella shielding me from the rain. He confronted the driver, taking the brunt of the insults and even sustaining minor injuries. Later, as we walked away, he looked at me with a mixture of exasperation and concern, gently wiping my tears. Why are you crying? He asked, his voice softening. You can always rely on me. But now, the man who had once promised I could rely on him was appearing in Lynn's social media posts, just days after my surgery. That day, after finishing a lecture, I absent-mindedly scrolled through my feed and froze. There it was. A photo of Lynn with a fresh bandage on her knee. The caption read, D. Ethan ditched his driver to come change my dressing himself. Minutes later, the post was deleted, only to be replaced by another. Got scolded, but I'll behave next time. I'll wait patiently for you to come back. The accompanying picture showed her pouting with swollen lips, her expression like that of a chastised kitten. In the corner of the frame, I recognized Ethan's watch and his parents' dining table. My hand trembled as I set my coffee cup down. Ethan had taken her to his parents' house, a boundary he knew better than to cross. I didn't ignore it. Instead, I liked the post and left a comment. Nice watch. Then I muted my phone and returned to work. By lunchtime, I had 8 missed calls from Ethan and 3 from Lynn. The post had vanished, but the damage was done. When Ethan called again, I finally answered. His tone was unusually measured. Mia, why didn't you answer earlier? It's Monday. There was a pause as though he had forgotten my schedule. After a few seconds, his tone shifted, becoming defensive. Lynn was just thanking me. You're overthinking this. In the background, I heard Lynn's voice, high-pitched and tearful. Mia, I just wanted to visit Uncle and Auntie. Ethan happened to be there and kindly helped me with my dressing. Please don't fight over this. I chuckled coldly. And which eye of yours saw me fighting with him? You sound guilty. Did you do something shameful? Ethan interrupted, his tone sharp with warning. My parents are here. Watch what you say. I fell silent, unwilling to continue. Ethan sighed, frustration evident in his voice. When do you finish work? I'll come pick you up. Mom made dumplings. A bitter laugh escaped me. Ethan, I said evenly. That house can only have one of us, either her or me. The line went silent. Unbeknownst to me, Lynn had put the call on speaker, and my words rang out loud and clear, echoing through the room for everyone to hear. Ethan's patience finally snapped. Fine, do whatever you want then. He hung up. The Cold War between us dragged on, silent but suffocating. At the university, my colleagues were abuzz with excitement about a new play, Reunion of Lovers. It's such a touching story, one of them said. Two ex-lovers meet again and rekindle their relationship. It's inspired so many couples to reunite after watching it. I tuned out the chatter, uninterested. After work, I picked up a thank you banner I had prepared and headed to the hospital. Ethan wasn't there. Instead, I handed the banner to Dr. Nathan. Sue, you should give it to him yourself, Nathan suggested, his tone cool and detached. I smiled. It's for you. Thank you for performing my surgery. He regarded me with his pale, unreadable gaze before silently hanging the banner on the wall. Will you handle my stitches too? I asked. Ethan is too busy to bother with it. Nathan's eyes didn't waver. If he can't make it, I'll take over. From that point on, I started visiting the hospital exclusively on weekends, deliberately avoiding Ethan's workdays. Nathan became my attending physician, handling every step of my recovery with calm efficiency. Weeks later, my phone buzzed. It was Ethan, and his voice was sharp, almost accusatory. Why are you always seeing Nathan? Are you deliberately avoiding me? Why does it matter? I replied lightly. I'm busy teaching during the week. Weekends are the only time I'm free. His frustration was evident. Mia, do you even know what you're doing? People often project their own insecurities onto others. Ethan had strayed, and now he was paranoid that I might do the same. Why don't you adjust your schedule to weekends then? I suggested calmly. He fell silent. I knew the reason. Weekends were reserved for Lynn's play and he wouldn't. I ended the call without waiting for his reply. Nathan, standing nearby, glanced at me with his usual neutral expression. What is it? I asked. He gestured toward my medical chart. You've requested sleeping pills 3 times this week. I can't prescribe anymore. It's fine, I said with a forced smile. A drink helps me sleep just as well. Nathan paused before speaking again. Would you like to join me for a drink tonight? I blinked, caught off guard. What? He removed his gloves with deliberate precision. The department is having a gathering. Ethan might be there. The mention of Ethan gave me pause, as his wife attending such events wasn't unusual, so I agreed. When we arrived, Ethan was nowhere to be found. The other doctors treated me with an awkward mix of kindness and sympathy, clearly aware of the growing tension between us. I barely touched my drink, but Nathan quietly placed a mild cocktail in front of me. It was sweet and soothing, and I felt a light buzz settle over me. Toward the end of the evening, a flurry of activity in their group chat caught my attention. A photo of Ethan appeared, showing him cooking in a kitchen. The image was quickly deleted, followed by a sheepish apology from the sender. Sorry, my wife was just messing around. The table fell silent and all eyes turned to me. The humiliation was suffocating. The photo taken in his parents' kitchen confirmed what I had long suspected. Ethan had spent the evening with Lynn. Though he hadn't crossed a definitive line, his actions teetered dangerously close to betrayal. After dinner, Nathan offered to drive me home. As I settled into the car, One of Ethan's female colleagues approached, her expression kind but pitying. "Don't overthink it," she said gently. "Focus on resting." I thanked her politely and leaned back, the alcohol dulling my emotions. Halfway home, my phone slipped from my hand and landed near Nathan's watch. Reaching for it, my hair accidentally caught on the strap. The situation was absurdly ironic. "Sorry," I muttered, fumbling to free myself. Nathan calmly removed his watch and stepped back, giving me space. Just as I untangled my hair, the car door was yanked open. Cold air rushed in as Ethan stood there, his expression dark and stormy. "Mia," he said through gritted teeth, "you'd better explain what you're doing." For the first time, I saw him lose control. He grabbed my wrist, dragging me out of the car, his anger barely restrained. "I didn't do anything," I said, meeting his furious gaze with calm indifference. "I saw it with my own eyes." His voice cracked, raw with frustration. The scene mirrored the day I was discharged from the hospital, except this time I was the one being accused. A bitter laugh escaped me. "My hair got caught on his watch," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Don't overthink it." For a moment, his anger faltered, realizing the hypocrisy of his outburst. He hesitated, but his pause only deepened my resentment. I turned to Nathan and thanked him quietly. "I'll handle it from here. Drive safe, Nathan." "No." Without another word, the silence between Ethan and me was oppressive as we walked to our building. "Mia," he finally said, his voice hoarse, "we need to talk." I turned sharply, my hand striking his cheek with a sound that echoed through the hallway. Months of anger and humiliation surged to the surface. "Don't touch me," I said coldly, my voice trembling with fury. "You disgust me." I wasn't sure what excuses Ethan gave his family, but within days, he returned home as though nothing had happened. He tried to mend things in his usual way, showering attention on Tansy. He bought her new toys and carried her around, using her as a bridge between us. "Look, Tansy," he said, holding her close. "Mama's mad at Papa again. Can you help her forgive me?" I took Tansy from him and stroked her absent-mindedly, letting his efforts fall flat. When the doorbell rang, I opened it to find my parents standing there. "Mia, we heard you two might be going on a trip," my mother said cautiously. "We thought we'd take Tansy for a while so she's not alone." I nodded. "That's fine. Take her for now." Ethan's face went pale as my parents scooped up the cat and left, closing the door behind them. I turned to him and dropped the toys he'd handed me at his feet. "We're divorcing, Ethan. Consider Tansy's future with you. Leave the rest to the lawyers." For the first time, he realized I wasn't bluffing. His confidence broke, replaced with desperation. "I don't agree," he said firmly, his voice trembling slightly. "Mia, I'm innocent. I've never crossed the line with Lynn. If you want me to cut ties with her, I will. Whatever makes you happy, I'll do it." His words made me laugh bitterly. "Now I'm the unreasonable one," I said, sinking into a chair. "Do you honestly think this is just about her? Have you considered that I might simply be tired of this marriage?" He froze, his lips pressing into a thin line. Finally, he asked the question he had likely been avoiding. "Is this because of Nathan?" I raised an eyebrow, sipping from the glass of water in front of me. "Don't be ridiculous, Ethan. Nathan and I are as innocent as you claim to be with Lynn. If you're willing to end your friendship with her for me, why shouldn't I cut ties with him for you? Would that satisfy you?" I watched as my words sank in, his face pale with frustration. But I wasn't finished. "The truth is, Ethan, whatever your relationship with Lynn is, mine with Nathan is exactly the same. Pure, upright, and absolutely none of your business." The edge in my voice cut through the room, and his composure finally snapped. "Mia, what do you want from me?" he demanded, slamming his hand on the table. "I've stopped contacting her. What else can I do?" I met his gaze, unflinching. "You think not speaking to her fixes everything? Do you want a medal for doing the bare minimum of decency?" He fell silent, staring at the phone I placed on the table. On its screen was a message from Lynn begging for his attention. "Ethan, I'm sorry. Are you ignoring me because I wanted to break up before? Let's just be friends." "Okay, I promise I won't bother you anymore." I added my phone to the table, showing him my messages with Nathan. "How's the wound healing?" Better, should be ready for stitches soon. Good, let's schedule it. There was nothing inappropriate, nothing that could be misconstrued, but I didn't stop there. You weren't willing to operate on me, I said, my voice steady but firm. So don't interfere with my aftercare. I prefer consistency. Ethan sat there in stunned silence. For once, he had nothing to say. A few nights later, my stomach began to ache unbearably during dinner. I reached for my coat, preparing to head to the hospital. Ethan's gaze followed me, concern flickering in his eyes. What's wrong? He asked. I ignored his outstretched hand and called a cab. Realizing where I was headed, he grabbed his keys. It's late. Don't push yourself. I'll drive you. Before I could respond, his phone rang. The name Lynn flashed across the screen. I snatched it from him, silencing the call. Ethan, I said coldly, I'm in pain. Take me to the hospital. The phone buzzed again. Call one more time, I said through gritted teeth, and I'll destroy you myself. With that, I threw the phone against the wall, shattering it into pieces. Ethan didn't hesitate. He grabbed his coat, helping me to the car. But as we passed the doorway, he bent to pick up the broken phone. A message on the screen caught his eye. Ethan, this is your choice. I'll disappear from this world. Would that make things better? His expression darkened as he read the words, his movements frozen. Moments later, he bolted out the door, leaving me standing alone in the hallway. The neighbors peeked out, curious about the commotion. I forced a calm tone as I addressed one of them. Could you help me to the hospital? I can't manage on my own. At the hospital, the doctor's words were clear. The pregnancy is at risk. If we don't act now, the baby might not survive. Do you want to proceed? I had already made up my mind on the way there. No, I said. Nathan appeared in the doorway, his face unreadable. He stayed silent as a senior nurse took charge, urging me to reconsider. Where's your husband? She asked, her voice tinged with disapproval. You shouldn't make this decision alone. I smiled faintly. He's busy. Don't wait for him. As she dialed his number again, I overheard the voice on the other end. Mia, Lynn said smugly. It must be hard for you to feel superior now. Ethan is in my bed. Did you upset him again? He's been very passionate tonight. The nurse paled, ending the call abruptly. I met her pitying gaze with a calm smile. Don't worry, his infidelity is no secret. Let's proceed. The procedure was quick. As I rested in the hospital corridor, Nathan sat beside me, handing me a cup of warm water. Thank you, Dr. Sue, I said quietly. I'm sorry for involving you in all of this. He stared out the window, his tone as calm as ever. No need to apologize. I knew what I was getting into. I turned to him, searching his expression for some hidden meaning, but he stood abruptly, brushing off the moment a nurse took me to the rest area, he said. Rest. Well, the next day, Ethan showed up at the hospital, panic etched on his face. Mia, he said, his voice unsteady as he reached for me. We're having a baby, right? I smiled faintly, stepping back. No, we're not. His face fell, confusion and hurt flickering in his eyes. What do you mean? He asked. I met his gaze, my voice unwavering. I terminated the pregnancy. Ethan's face froze, his usual composure shattered. You terminated it without discussing it with me? He asked, his voice trembling with disbelief. I let out a bitter laugh. Since when do you care about discussing things with me? You didn't consult me when you left me on the operating table. Why should I consult you now? His expression darkened, but before he could speak, Lynn appeared behind him. Dear sister-in-law, she said sweetly, her voice dripping with mock concern. I heard you were pregnant. Ethan was with me last night. He didn't tell me. Her words were laced with mockery, her eyes gleaming with misplaced triumph as though she had won some twisted competition. But the onlookers around us, nurses, doctors, and even patients, were watching, their whispers spreading like wildfire. I smiled a sharp, cutting smile that made her falter. Didn't anyone tell you? I asked softly, loud enough for everyone to hear. I terminated the pregnancy because my husband was too busy warming another woman's bed to bother with his wife or his child. A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd, carrying the scandalous revelation. Lynn's face drained of color, And for the first time, doubt flickered in her eyes. "That's not true," she stammered, looking desperately at Ethan for support. "I didn't." I cut her off, my voice cold and steady. "Don't bother denying it." The phone call I overheard made it quite clear. "You seemed proud enough of your actions at the time." The murmurs grew louder, panic spreading across Lynn's face as she turned to Ethan. "She's lying. You know she is. Say something, Ethan." But Ethan stood frozen, his lips pressed tightly together. His silence was damning. "You see," I said, my voice calm but laced with venom, "even your so-called lover can't defend you now. You've always thought you could have it all, Ethan, but you were wrong." I turned to the crowd, my voice cutting through their whispers. "Let me make one thing clear," I said. "I have no intention of staying in a marriage where fidelity and trust mean nothing, and I certainly won't raise a child with a man who abandons his family for someone like her." When I returned to my hospital room, the news had already spread like wildfire. Lynn's once smug reputation had crumbled. Nurses whispered about her audacity, while patients gossiped about the scene she had caused. Later that evening, I overheard two young interns chatting. "Did you see the drama earlier? That woman really thought she could outplay the professor's wife. What a joke." "She's done for," the other replied. "No one will respect her now. She can kiss her career goodbye." The fallout came quickly. By the next, the hospital's reputation committee had received multiple complaints about Lynn's behavior. Her actions had not only tarnished her own reputation but also cast a shadow on the hospital. Within a week, she was fired. Ethan faced consequences. The scandal made him the center of unwelcome attention. Patients and colleagues alike questioned his professionalism. It wasn't long before he was asked to resign. In the following weeks, I focused on my recovery at home. My parents occasionally visited, bringing Tone to keep me company. One quiet afternoon, as I stroked the cat's soft fur, my lawyer called to update me. "Ethan hasn't signed the papers yet," he said. "He's stalling." I sighed, unsurprised. "Give him a deadline. If he doesn't sign, we'll take it to court." Later that evening, Ethan called. "Mia," he began, his voice hoarse. "Can we talk just one last time?" Leaning back on the couch, I let my fingers trail through Tone's fur. "There's nothing left to talk about," I replied quietly. He was silent for a moment before speaking again, his tone filled with regret. "Do you remember when we first met at the matchmaking dinner?" "Of course," I said evenly. "It wasn't particularly romantic." He chuckled bitterly. "It wasn't. But do you remember what I told you that night? That I wanted a partner who could share my life, not just my work." "You also promised loyalty," I said sharply. "And look where we are now." His breath hitched and I heard a faint tremor in his voice as he continued. "I made mistakes, Mia, but I loved you. I still do. Can't we find a way to fix this?" I closed my eyes, my hand tightening around Tone's fur. "No, Ethan, it's too late." The silence that followed was deafening. "You've made your choice," I said, my voice unwavering. "And now I've made mine. Sign the papers." That was the last conversation we had before the divorce was finalized. As I left the courthouse weeks later, holding the final decree in my hands, I felt an unfamiliar but welcome sense of relief. For the first time in years, I was free. The divorce papers were finalized, and just like that, the thread tying Ethan and me together was severed. I walked out of the courthouse with a sense of closure, but the weight in my chest lingered. The years we had spent together replayed in my mind like a broken reel. Moments of laughter, fleeting happiness, and the slow unraveling of everything we had built. For the first few weeks, I focused on healing both physically and emotionally. Tansy, now back in my care, became my constant companion, her soft purring filling the otherwise quiet apartment. Ethan, on the other hand, seemed to vanish. He left the city shortly after the divorce, taking a position elsewhere. After resigning from the hospital, news of his departure spread quickly, and whispers of his scandal followed him like a shadow. Despite it all, I couldn't bring myself to hate him. Perhaps it was because at one point I had truly loved him, or maybe it was because I still remembered the man he used to be before everything fell apart. But whatever. The reason I chose to let go of the anger. Months later, I heard from a mutual acquaintance that Ethan had returned briefly to visit his parents. I was on campus at the time, heading to a lecture when my phone buzzed with the message. He looks different, older, tired. I think the past year hasn't been kind to him. I read the words, then put my phone away, unwilling to dwell on the image of a man who no longer had a place in my life. One day, while organizing my bookshelf, I stumbled upon a photo album tucked away in a drawer. Inside were pictures from our wedding, casual snapshots from vacations, and candid moments at home. In one photo, we were sitting by a lake, his arm draped around my shoulder as I laughed at something he had said. It was a rare moment of unguarded happiness, one that felt like it belonged to a different lifetime. I stared at the photo for a long time before closing the album and placing it back in the drawer. Memories, after all, are just that, fragments of the past. Not long after, a mutual friend reached out with surprising news. Did you hear? Lynn moved out of the city. She left the theater company and hasn't been seen since. I nodded, unsurprised. The fallout from her actions had been severe, and her reputation within both the theater and medical circles was beyond repair. Good riddance, the friend added. I didn't respond. Lynn had already taken enough from me. I wouldn't let her occupy my thoughts any longer. One chilly evening, as autumn leaves scattered across the streets, I received an unexpected call. It was from an unfamiliar number. Hesitating for a moment, I answered. Mia, a familiar voice greeted me. It was Ethan. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. The sound of his voice, once so familiar, now felt foreign. What do you want? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. There was a pause on the other end, as if he were gathering his thoughts. I just wanted to check on you, he said finally. To see how you're doing. I'm fine, he replied curtly. Silence stretched between us before he spoke again. Do you remember the day we went to the lake? He asked, his voice softer now. The way you laughed when I slipped and fell into the water? You teased me for days afterward. I closed my eyes, willing myself to remain unaffected. I remember, I said quietly. Those were good times, he murmured, almost to himself. Yes, I admit it, but they're in the past now. His breath hitched audibly. Mia, I interrupted, my voice firm. Don't say anything you'll regret. He fell silent, and I took a steadying breath before continuing. You made your choices, Ethan, and I've made mine. Let's leave it at that. The line went quiet for a moment before he whispered, I'm sorry. I didn't reply. Instead, I ended the call and placed my phone face down on the table, staring at the faint reflections in the window. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself thinking less and less about him. The scars he had left, both seen and unseen, began to fade, replaced by a cautious hope for the future. I wasn't sure where life would lead me. I knew one thing for certain. I was finally free.